You ever feel like you should be further along? Like you should have done more, been more consistent, more disciplined, more successful by now. Maybe you started something, stopped again, and now there's this voice telling you you could have been so much further ahead already. Whoo, child. Well, I know that feeling because I have been there. And baby, it don't always feel good, right? Even with this podcast, I've started and stopped it a few times. In my mind, it's like, Amanda, if you had just been consistent, you'd be way ahead right now. And that creeping thought of like not enoughness, and I don't even know if that's a word, but it's going to be a word for us today. Right? And I want you to just let it settle in. That thing that comes over you when you struggle with what you haven't been able to do. The thoughts and the feeling, that heaviness, because it will definitely rob you of your progress if you let it. But what if instead of beating ourselves up, we chose to show ourselves grace? So, hey, welcome back to my show, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here today because we are shifting from self criticism to self compassion so we can lead better. And if we are talking about choosing grace over guilt, whoo, there's some things we're going to have to figure out around that, right? Because it's not just this like mindset shift, but it's a way of moving through life, business, and leadership. And before we get into it, I do need your help, y'all. Like, if this episode is already resonating with you, would you please support the show by liking it, sharing it with at least two people, not just one, like two. So in case like they didn't get your message, the second one will. Okay, like let's do that. Okay, so I really appreciate that. And then when you have the chance, the opportunity, leave a comment for us in the bottom. Your engagement just makes this really just work well. It makes all the difference in reaching more women who really need to hear this. Okay. So, all right, like, let's get into it. Grace. What is grace? How does that work? So, grace gives you permission to be a human, even with all that ambition, like y'all are still human. And it says that you are allowed to have things happen in your life that get in the way. Grace says you are fully responsible for 8,000 things. Yes. And sometimes you won't have time for you or your business or your goals. It says, yes, you will fall behind, but that is not the sum total of who you are. I had this conversation inside like my business community recently. We're doing a 10-day visibility challenge. And by day 3, I realized the things I had recommended that they do was a heavy task. And I didn't want them to start to feel bad if they were behind. So I had to stop and really just remind them of who they are and really what's important, right? When you are working on your purpose, being behind is actually a lie. And I want you to let that settle into that story that you're telling yourself about not doing enough or not being where you should be, it is just a story. And you can choose to tell yourself a different one. You can tell yourself a story from a position of grace instead. Grace allows us to acknowledge the mistakes without attaching them to our identity because yeah, like sometimes it really is on us to get up, it really is on us to stop scrolling and set some boundaries. Like I don't want to take away accountability in this because we do have to check ourselves sometimes. Like really we are the ones who get in the way, and that can be from like a deep emotional level or just like the practical, because we really just won't say no, because we really just won't get up. And I am talking to myself here because sometimes like I just won't stop and it's like, oh my God, like you've lost so much time doing nonsense, right? Or, oh, like you really could have gotten up, girl, so that you could have made it to the gym. There's no reason, or the reason is you stayed up late when you should have gone to bed. You knew what was coming, right? So, and not to say like that can't be complicated and there can be other things in there that's kind of holding you up, right? But we can't just put onus on everything else. Sometimes it really is just us. Okay, so we have to take some accountability and action in that too, right? Sometimes it also requires us to just pause and reflect instead of spiraling into self-doubt, like what's really happening. And I think when we do that, it makes it easier to move forward with clarity and determination instead of getting stuck in the guilt. Okay, so if I had to think about that practically, I would say, let's say the thinking the wording is coming up for you, right? Instead of saying like I messed up, I should have known better, how about you just try, what is this teaching me? How can I do better next time? Right? Because you have this choice, and it may happen very quickly, where you have this choice to make a different decision in how you respond, where you can go down that death spiral of negative thinking, or you can recognize it. And instead of reacting to it, choose how you want to respond to it. Okay, so grace for me right now looks like this podcast, which is both on YouTube and hopefully you're hearing it podcast wise too. I haven't kept up with the weekly episodes the way I originally planned like a year ago. And I thought about this thing maybe 2 years ago. And yes, maybe I could have been further along if I started and kept up, but here I am. Grace is acknowledging that this is where I am. And I think holding space for both, like that still also sucks a little bit for me because I know my potential, I know my capacity as well. I know where like I could be, but I don't want to get into too many coulds and shoulds because that's when it starts to get really self-critical. Right. So I think that's what I have to really remind myself, like, you know what, girl, but you started. And maybe this time I can celebrate that I did start, that I did restart, and that maybe I'm going to go a little bit further this time. I can celebrate that I went a little bit further. And if you think about it, like, how many people do we know start things, stop it, and never come back? So if you did come back, give yourself some credit. Celebrate that. Because the truth is, we do have full-time lives. I know that I do. I have a full-time private practice on top of coaching and speaking and all these obligations and family. And I do try to have a life, not much, but I try. I try to balance it out, right? So that means I really don't have a lot of time. And as much as I would love to do everything that I really can. So I'm actually busy. And sometimes I think my mind forgets that when it gets critical about what it hasn't done. And that's probably something that you can relate to because we tend to lean towards the negative. So I think in this space, it's important to kind of remember as you recognize it, what's really happening. And for me, it's like the lesson here is like, girl, like God is still shaping you and he's teaching you how to navigate these things. And sometimes it'll work well and sometimes it won't, but everything that's happening is going to position you better to serve. And when I think about that, that just feels like more empowering to me. And it brings me back to this idea that, business growth, it's personal. So I think it's like this reciprocal energy that the more you grow personally, the more your business is going to grow, and the more it grows and it challenges you, the more that you will grow as well, right? And our mindset is important in that. So the stronger our mindset becomes, the more your business, your leadership, and your impact will reflect that strength. Okay, so guilt and self-criticism really shuts the door on that learning and that evolution, but grace really opens the door back up for you. Okay, so I hope that you're getting a lot out of this. And I don't want it to just be another like inspiring conversation. I want you to actually walk away with something that you can use. And if you guys follow me on socials at Amanda Flood, or you've heard me speak before or work with me directly, you already know that I'm going to challenge you, right? Like I'm going to give you homework. I'm going to give you things to really consider. So let's rock with 5 ways to start practicing grace over guilt, if that's okay. So the first one I'm thinking is recognize the guilt when it shows up. The moment you hear that negative self-talk creeping in, pause, say it out loud. I'm feeling guilty about, or I'm blaming myself because. I think that's important because we're starting to just acknowledge what's in the room with us instead of pushing it away or ignoring it. And naming it starts to take its power away. It starts to give you that power back. All right. Second thing, get curious, not critical. Instead of judging, and I'll pause there because I realize that critical might be hard for some of us if we're used to other people being critical in our lives. So even this might be a different kind of flex for you. But essentially, instead of judging yourself, ask like, what is this experience teaching me? Just kind of get curious with yourself, talk to yourself, because maybe it's teaching you something that you need. Like, I need better boundaries. Because if I put better boundaries on my time, for example, I can leave work on time and have more time to work on my goals or my business, right? If I institute or implement more boundaries for myself, I can maybe learn to delegate a little bit better instead of taking on all these responsibilities that's draining me. Or maybe I need to give myself permission to slow down, right? The other thing to ask yourself is this thought true? Because remember, it could be a lie, right? Is it just a lie that requires grace? These are the things, how we want to approach this. Third thing I would say is to speak to yourself like you would a friend. If a close friend lost motivation or fell behind, would you tear her down? Or would you remind them that they're still capable, they're still valuable? And I think we would probably lend them some kindness. Girl, give that to yourself, right? The next thing, the fourth thing is to just check your values, because I think guilt often shows up when we feel disconnected from what we truly want or need. So take a moment to check in. Are you working in a way that aligns with you and your vision? If not, what small shifts can you make? Next, take a step forward. Right? You may have backstepped, but now it's time to take it up a notch. Even if it's small, like what's that one thing that you could do today? Do something today that helps you move past the guilt and into action. And if that's hard to do by yourself, that's okay. Know yourself enough to know that. Find an accountability partner, a mentor, a coach, or a community. Your goal is to set yourself up for success, not to get yourself back in the same cycle. All right. And setting yourself up for success might look like I'm going to send an email today without thinking about it. It might look like scheduling time with that mentor or the community that's going to hold you accountable, that you don't want to let down or disappoint. It might look like restarting the YouTube channel and adding a podcast or whatever your plan is, or simply forgiving yourself and starting fresh, right? Like, girl, it's okay. You are more than what feels like a mistake, what feels like it's taking forever, what feels like I shoulda or coulda. You're more than that. Even if it feels like it's cost you time or it has, it's okay. You are worthy of that same grace that we give so freely to everybody else. Give it to you so we can get that out the way and create space for what you actually need. Okay, so today I invite you to commit to grace, not just in theory, but in action, because you still have time, you have today. Because grace is not weakness, it's wisdom. And the more you walk in it, baby, the stronger and more powerful that you will become. So let it shape how you lead, let it shape how you build, let it shape how you show up for yourself. All right, I think I'm good. This feels a little choppy for me as I'm getting back into it, but y'all can let me know, okay? This is my first take at this, and I think I may leave it at that instead of beating myself up. Like it just is what it is, and I know that as you start anything new, it can feel kind of choppy. It's like starting to ride a bike for the first time, or getting back into a class, or even doing something like running and starting over again. It sucks to start over, and it could just feel all over the place. And I think that's the feeling that I have right now. And I don't want to put myself in a position of like constantly restarting. I want to use this as my trajectory to keep going, even if it doesn't feel good to me, even if it's not meeting like my own internal standards. Like the same thing that I'm telling you, it's okay to give yourself grace. I think that's the same thing I want to hold for myself in this moment. Right. So, however you take that, it is. I don't want to apologize for anything, because then that's still not me honoring myself. So how this sounds, it is. How this feels, it is. What it looks like, it is. Okay. And if any bit of this episode has just hit home for you, if it spoke to you, please do support. Like the episode, that lets me know that you're with it. Subscribe to the channel, and share it with two people who need to hear this today. Just send them the link and say, hey, just listen to this. All right. Third thing you could do is leave a comment or review. I love to hear how you're choosing grace on your own journey. Remember, we grow together, and your support makes all the difference in getting this message to the woman who needs it most. And that might even be me, by leaving, some encouragement or just your perspective. So until next time, lead boldly, grow intentionally, and give yourself the grace that you deserve. I'm going to do that for me. See you soon.